The cafe hummed with quiet conversation, the occasional clatter of cups, and the rich aroma of fresh coffee filling the air. Behind the counter, Jake, a young man with Down syndrome, stood with a cheerful smile. He loved working here, taking orders, greeting customers, and preparing drinks. His coworkers always said his presence made the cafe feel warmer. The door swung open abruptly, and in strode Mr. Carter, a sharply dressed businessman in a designer suit. His expensive watch gleamed under the cafe lights as he strode toward the counter, talking loudly on his phone. "Listen, I don't care about the delay. Just get it done," he snapped before ending the call with an exasperated sigh. His impatient eyes landed on Jake. Jake beamed at him. "Good afternoon, sir. How can I help you today?" Carter barely acknowledged him, checking his watch instead. "Yeah, just give me a black coffee. No sugar, and make it fast." Jake nodded and carefully began preparing the order. He took his time measuring the grounds properly, ensuring everything was just right. His hands worked steadily, but his pace was noticeably slower than the usual baristas. Carter's frustration built immediately. His fingers drummed against the counter, his foot tapped against the floor, and he let out a loud sigh of impatience. "Oh, come on," he muttered. A few more seconds passed, and finally, his irritation spilled over. "Are you serious? Could you move any slower?" Carter snapped. "I don't have all day." The cafe went silent. A couple sitting at a nearby table paused mid-conversation, exchanging uncomfortable glances. The barista working beside Jake froze, looking worried. Jake, however, remained calm. He looked up at Carter, his smile faltering just slightly but never disappearing. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm just making sure it's perfect for you." Carter let out a mocking chuckle, shaking his head. "Perfect, please. At this rate, I could have brewed it myself." From a quiet corner of the cafe, Keanu Reeves lifted his gaze from his book. His sharp, observant eyes took in the scene, and his expression, once neutral, turned serious. He placed his book down. He had seen enough. The cafe remained uncomfortably silent as Carter scoffed, shaking his head in disbelief. He grabbed the coffee cup that Jake had just finished preparing and inspected it like he expected something to be wrong with it. Jake, still smiling warmly, pushed the cup a little closer. "Here you go, sir. Hope you have a great day." Carter took a sip, then grimaced dramatically. It's too hot." He slammed the cup onto the counter, causing some coffee to spill. "Seriously, is this how you serve customers?" Jake quickly grabbed a napkin and wiped the counter. "I'm sorry, sir. I can make you another one if you'd like." Carter rolled his eyes. "Yeah, no thanks. I'd rather not wait another 30 minutes for a simple coffee." He let out a mocking laugh before eyeing Jake up and down. "You know, I don't get it. Why would they even let someone like you work here?" A few customers gasped softly. The barista standing next to Jake's eyes widened, but she didn't know what to say. The air in the cafe felt thick with tension. Jake's smile faltered slightly, but he held himself together. "I just like working here, sir," he said softly. Carter let out another sarcastic chuckle. "That's cute, but let's be real. You're slowing this whole place down. Maybe this isn't the right job for you." From his quiet corner, Keanu Reeves carefully placed his book on the table. His eyes locked onto Carter, his usual calm demeanor shifting into something cold and serious. He had seen arrogance before, but this was cruelty. Keanu stood up. His movements were smooth, controlled. He took a few steps toward the counter, and positioned himself right beside Carter, who was too caught up in his own arrogance to notice. The entire cafe seemed to hold its breath. Keanu cleared his throat, his voice calm but firm. "Hey," he said, drawing Carter's attention. "You know, I've met a lot of people in my life. But I've never understood why some think belittling others makes them superior." Carter blinked in surprise, finally realizing who was standing beside him. A few customers whispered excitedly. Jake looked up at Keanu, his smile slowly returning. The moment of reckoning had arrived. Carter blinked, his arrogant smirk fading instantly as he finally recognized the man standing beside him. Keanu Reeves. The cafe had grown so silent that you could hear the faint hum of the espresso machine. A few customers exchanged glances, some whispering in hushed excitement. The Hollywood star, known for his kindness and humility, was now standing between Jake and his bully. Carter, for the first time, looked visibly unsettled. He let out an awkward chuckle, trying to play it cool. "Oh, you're..." Keanu raised a hand, cutting him off effortlessly. His expression remained calm, but there was an undeniable weight in his voice. "You know," Keanu said, his deep, steady voice carrying across the cafe, "kindness doesn't cost anything. But the way you just treated this man, that says a lot about you." Carter swallowed, suddenly feeling the weight of every pair of eyes in the cafe. His confidence wavered. I didn't mean." Keanu tilted his head slightly. "You didn't mean what? To humiliate him? To make yourself feel superior by putting someone else down?" His voice remained gentle, yet razor-sharp, cutting straight through Carter's weak excuses. Jake, standing behind the counter, watched the scene with wide eyes. No one had ever stood up for him like this before. Carter shifted uncomfortably, his face growing red. He let out a nervous chuckle. "Look, I just wanted coffee, all right. I was in a rush." Keanu folded his arms. "And that justifies disrespecting someone who's working hard. Tell me, does belittling others make you feel important?" Carter had no response. He looked around, as if searching for an escape, but there was none. The cafe, once his stage for arrogance, had now become a courtroom, and Keanu Reeves was the judge. A woman sitting at a nearby table, who had been quietly watching, suddenly spoke up. "You owe him an apology." Another man nodded. "Yeah, man, that was out of line." Carter felt the pressure of the room closing in. His usual confidence was nowhere to be found. Jake, however, simply stood there, his warm smile returning. He didn't need revenge. He had already won. Keanu, still watching Carter, simply waited. The next move was his to make. Carter shifted awkwardly, his confidence completely shattered. The weight of Keanu's words, combined with the stares of the cafe patrons, left him feeling exposed and embarrassed. The smug businessman who had walked in minutes ago was now just a man scrambling for an escape from his own actions. Jake, still standing behind the counter, watched with his usual kindness. He wasn't angry. He wasn't seeking revenge. He just stood there, waiting, as if silently hoping Carter would make the right choice. Keanu didn't move. His expression remained calm, but his presence alone made it clear that he was expecting something. Something more than silence. Carter took a deep breath, then finally muttered, I'm sorry." His voice was barely above a whisper. Jake tilted his head. "What was that, sir?" Carter sighed, his pride crumbling before everyone's eyes. "I said I'm sorry," he repeated, this time loud enough for the cafe to hear. He avoided making eye contact, but at least he had said it. The cafe patrons exchanged glances. Some nodded in approval, others simply waited to see what Jake would do. Jake's warm smile returned. "Thank you, sir. Everyone makes mistakes." His voice carried no resentment, no bitterness, just pure sincerity. Carter looked stunned. He had been expecting anger, maybe even sarcasm. But instead, Jake had chosen to forgive him without hesitation. Keanu, watching the exchange, finally gave a small nod of approval. "That's real strength," he said, looking at Jake. "Not just serving coffee, but choosing kindness even when people don't deserve it." Jake's cheeks turned slightly red, but his smile never wavered. Carter exhaled sharply and shook his head. He still felt embarrassed, but deep down, he knew he had learned something today. Without another word, he grabbed his coffee and walked toward the exit, his arrogance replaced with humility. The cafe slowly returned to normal. Customers resumed their conversations, but the energy in the room felt different now, as if something important had just happened. Keanu turned back to Jake. "Keep being you, man. The world needs more people like you." Jake beamed. "Thank you, sir. Would you like a coffee?" "It's on the house." Keanu chuckled. "Only if I get to pay for it." The cafe burst into warm laughter, and just like that, kindness won the day. Carter stepped out of the cafe, the cool air hitting his face as he took a deep breath. He felt different, lighter, maybe even humbled. He had entered the cafe as a man who saw himself as superior, but he was leaving with something he hadn't expected, a lesson in humanity. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted. The tension from earlier had melted away, replaced with warm conversations and soft laughter. The cafe had returned to its normal rhythm, but something about it felt brighter, kinder. Jake continued working behind the counter, his usual cheerful energy untouched by the earlier confrontation. If anything, he seemed happier. Keanu Reeves remained by the counter, sipping his coffee with a quiet satisfaction. He didn't need to say much more, his actions had already spoken volumes. A woman approached Jake with a smile. "You handled that really well," she said. Jake grinned proudly. "Thank you, ma'am. My mom always told me, kindness is a choice." Keanu chuckled, setting his cup down. "She's a wise woman." The cafe's owner, a kind-looking elderly man, had been watching from the back. He walked up to Jake and patted him on the shoulder. "You showed great patience today. I'm proud of you." Jake's face lit up with pride. "I just did what felt right." Keanu stood, reaching for his wallet. He pulled out a generous tip, placing it in the jar. "This isn't just for the coffee, it's for your strength." Jake's eyes widened. "Wow, thank you, sir." Keanu smiled and nodded. "Keep being you, Jake." As Keanu walked toward the door, another customer whispered, "He really is as kind as they say." Jake chuckled. "Yeah, he is." Outside, Carter lingered near his car, staring at his reflection in the window. For the first time, he didn't recognize the man staring back. He took a deep breath, grabbed his phone, and typed a message to his assistant, "Cancel the meeting. I need to go see my mother." As Keanu stepped outside, he saw Carter standing there. Their eyes met. Carter gave a small nod, one of silent acknowledgement, maybe even gratitude. Keanu nodded back. No words were needed. The lesson had been learned. And with that, he walked away, leaving behind one changed man in a cafe filled with kindness.